After working as senior facade consultant in leading positions in London, New York and Stuttgart, Benjamin Baer founded Werner Sobeck Dubai as executive vice president in 2007. He later joined the Werner Sobeck head office in Germany and acted as team leader. In 2012, he joined Meinhardt Facade Technology as technical director. After being head of facade at Rumble Dubai from 2018 to 2020, he rejoined Werner Sobeck Dubai as managing director. He was the author of various facade engineering publications, acted as region chairman of the Society of Facade Engineering, conference session chairman, event moderator and speaker. And now we welcome him to the stage in about 10 seconds.
Okay, great. I hope you can hear me. I think the technical issues are now resolved. My name is Benjamin Baer. Thanks for the introduction. I'm working as a facade consultant for over 25 years right now. I've been talking around the world at several conferences and events, and today I'm going to talk about glass and coated glass and on the impact on the human being. The previous presentation was quite actually interesting. It was talking about 5G friendly glass. So I would put the question out there, what about human-friendly glass? Is our glass that we're currently designing, is it really focusing on us as a human being? We're designing buildings predominantly for us, for human beings. So is the current development of solar control coated glass, of low E coated glass, focusing into the right direction? Meaning that are we focusing on us as a human being? And does the glass gives us, as a terms of transmission, the spectral transmittance that we as a human being need to stay healthy? So all of these kind of points are discussed within my PowerPoint, if it ever comes up. I think still some technical issues. So let me continue to actually entertain you. I mean, what I currently see is that the glass industry seems to be focusing on the visible light transmittance, maximizing the visible light transmittance, while at the same time reducing the solar heat gain that comes through the glass. We call it the so-called selectivity. And this purely focusing on the energy performance of the glass puts up some question marks. I'm based in Dubai, actually within the Middle East, and we're currently running some very big projects out there, so the world's biggest project currently designed in the Middle East. And we're using quite dark solar control coatings to reduce the AC cooling loads. Nevertheless, this coated glass is also getting more popular in Europe. We then, for example, also have laminated safety glass, usually done with PVB interlayers. And all of the PowerPoint are going to go through it later. So PVB interlayers, or typical ones, they filter out the UV light. But do we need the UV light? We as a human being? So all of these kind of questions that we started raising within Werner Sobeck as a group. We're working together with several universities, researchers, and it's also a very interesting collaboration between facade consultants, glass people, between psychologists, between biological people, so to assess what is the impact of all the stuff that we're currently doing. Also the PowerPoint, which is unfortunately still black, it's looking at two things. It's first of all, it's a natural daylight coming through glass. But the word natural, there's a certain question mark. How natural is the daylight coming through our modern glazing? At the same time, we have so-called artificial light coming from our light bulbs. And also this is an interesting question, what kind of light is emitted by light bulbs? So this is our founder, Professor Dr. Werner Sobeck. You see, it's a nice photo showing different things. It's showing glass, and glass is one of the most important building materials. So over the thousands of years, glass is important because glass gives light transmittance, glass gives vision, also glass gives reflection, glass also gives protection from the elements, from heat, rain, wind, and so on and so on. Now, looking at the glass itself, we need to understand glass and light, and this gives a bit of a broader view. Our eyes can only see a small spectrum, from about 380 nanometer wavelength, starting from the blue light spectrum, to about 760 nanometer wavelength. So this is what our human eye can see. And this is currently where our coatings are focusing on. We have a high transmittance in the visible spectrum, and everything else we try to filter out, so reflect or absorb. Now, the importance of light is known since decades. Human beings need light. Human beings need exposure to light. So it's not only seeing the light, it's also being exposed to the light. Babies were put in the sunlight years and years ago. We see old photos over here, so already generations before us understood the importance of light for the human well-being. Submarine soldiers, not exposed to proper daylight, were put under artificial light sources. Otherwise, people will get actually depressive. Now, talking about all of these things, it's a clear correlation between exposure to sunlight. And for example, this is a map showing on the right-hand side the depression and anxiety in the United States. On the left-hand side, you can see the average daylight sun exposure. You can see like states like California or Texas with the highest amount of natural daylight also are the states with the lowest prescription rates for antidepressive drugs. Yeah? So it's a clear correlation. Human beings need light. Now, we all know that architects and designers are known about this so-called sick building syndrome, came up in the 1970s, 1980s. There were big offices designed with no natural daylight. People, us, human beings, got sick. So we got a bit smart. We understood that we need to focus on light. Now, what's currently the status? We as human beings, all of us, we became an indoor species. We nowadays spend the most of our time indoor. Current studies from the United States show that we spend about 87% of our time indoor, children even more than adults. So this is concerning. So we became an indoor species. Yeah? Our evolution as human beings was being exposed to the full solar spectrum, living outside. Nowadays, we're living inside. And this shows the importance that looking at the light, so what kind of spectral exposure do we have as human beings? So you can see on the left-hand side the kind of percentage distribution of light exposure of human beings. Now, what we see right now, that people got aware of that, so people are now asked, get outside, get natural daylight. There are apps also to control how often are you getting outside. Nevertheless, what I would like to do, I would like to focus on the glass, both on the natural sources of daylight inside buildings and the artificial ones. So starting with the artificial light sources. And this is the green building design. So we are currently focusing on sustainability. So our light sources nowadays, they focus on purely the visible spectrum. There's some light suppliers nowadays that try to simulate the kind of color range that the sun gives us over the day. And this comes later, that the blue light is quite important for us as a human being. So now looking at the artificial lights, this is a graph showing the emittance of different artificial light sources, starting with a candle. The candle emits light by heat, so it's emitting a wide spectrum. Also the long wave, actually infrared spectrum. A traditional light bulb, taking a lot of energy, is similar, emitting light by heat, or visible spectrum for the light by heat. Nowadays, the LED light bulbs you can see on the bottom left-hand side. So this is the wavelength. You can see starting from 300 nanometer to about so from the UV light to the long wave, kind of from infrared radiation. And the LED lights only emit light, or only emit in the visible spectrum. No UV light, no long wave infrared radiation. Quite important. So we are no longer exposed to the other wavelengths besides the visible spectrum from artificial light. Now looking at the natural light sources within buildings, our natural daylight comes through glazing. All of our glazing, we have the solar radiation coming over here. And it's always the sum of the absorption, transmission, and the reflectance, always 100%. Because energy or solar radiation need to go somewhere. It cannot disappear. So we are looking actually at the transmission. So what's coming through the glass? You can see here the percentages. And we started looking into what's coming through our glass nowadays. And this is comparing different glass. At the top, this is the sun spectral emittance. And you see that we as a human being, our kind of evolution over time was that our eye can see in the peak what the sun gives us. So this is a visible range. This is where our eyes can see. Now you can see here, this is the spectral transmittance of different glass panels, starting from very similar, clear, uncoated glass. You can see it takes a bit of the blue, a bit of the kind of UV light, but then it's more or less a kind of linear transmittance of the whole spectrum, starting from UV light, visible light, to the infrared light. Now with the implementation of solar control coatings and low E coatings, the transmittance through the coated glass got more selective. So now we're trying to have a high transmittance in the visible range and a low transmittance in the other spectral ranges, meaning then the long wave infrared or the UV light is either reflected or it's actually absorbed by the coating. And this selectivity of the coatings, it become more and more solar selective. Now going from the single silver to the double silver to the triple silver coatings that we have nowadays, is that the transmittance of our modern solar control coatings is purely focusing on the visible spectrum. Everything else is out. This is mainly for sustainability, because whatever we cannot see, we want to keep it out, because this would increase the cooling loads of our buildings. Now, understanding that, and this is a bit of unique in mankind, because since about 20, 30, 40 years, this is something happening that never happened before, because always use candle, normal light bulbs, clear glazing. So this non-exposure to the non-visible range, it's a question, how healthy is it? Now, starting with about the long wave kind of from infrared radiation, this is the section through the skin, and this is the penetration depth of radiation into our skin. And you can see that the penetration depth into the skin, it starts with a long wave infrared radiation. People, for example, from Finland fly to Spain or Italy for the sun. They take sunbathing. Would they do the same sunbathing under LED lights? Would you feel the same? No, you wouldn't, because you want to be exposed to the infrared radiation. People come back to Finland after 2 weeks, they feel good. They're happy. There's also a lot of research nowadays. What is the impact of the long wave kind of radiation? For example, this is a medical application against Parkinson disease. So all of these things, there's a lot of studies on the impact on the infrared and near-infrared on human well-being. It's an important thing. So right now, I wouldn't say that we have all of the answers, but I would like to put out a question mark that what we're currently doing, is it the right way what we do? Do we need to rethink about these things? Do we need to question what we're doing? Do we need to change the coatings that we're currently applying? Do we need to maybe balance between sustainability design and human-centric design? Yeah. So my paper has all of these references. So let me now compare these two things with the natural daylight and the artificial daylight. And again, you see that we have the same effect for sustainability that's over the last decades. That now we're using LED light bulbs, only emitting the visible spectrum, nothing else. We also have our highly performing solar control coating on the glass, triple silver, quad silver, low E coatings, only transmitting the purely visible spectrum, nothing else. The impact on the human being is a big experiment. We currently don't know. We're just installing this glass and these light bulbs, but we don't know what is the long-term effect. And again, comparing the kind of artificial light sources and the natural light coming through the glazing, you can see very clearly, very similar. It's only in the visible spectrum, nothing else. And this is a so-called energy efficiency, but this is also focusing on us, what we need as a human being. I want to compare it if a human being drinks distilled water. It is water, yes, but people will die because of distilled water, because it's not containing all we need. Now looking at going away from the infrared radiation, looking at the blue light spectrum, and this is quite kind of interesting. For example, blue lights, so newborn babies, they could have the so-called jaundice. So the liver is not able to clean the blood. These babies are put under blue light spectrum, about 460 nanometer wavelength. So then the skin helps to clean the blood. So it shows as an example how dependent we are as human beings on certain wavelengths of the light, of the solar spectrum. You can see this is the kind of light. So it's again, are we exposed to the light and the spectral wavelengths that we need? Another blue light spectrum, about 490 nanometer wavelengths, it's quite important. Most of your phones, all of your iPhones, Samsung, whatever, you have a night mode. So usually after 4 p.m., 5 p.m., you want to switch on the night mode. And then your cell phone has less blue spectral kind of emittance, so the pictures appear a bit more reddish, orangish. This is because we should not be exposed to this blue light spectrum in the afternoon, otherwise we're not falling asleep. It's so-called the human circadian rhythm. It's a melatonin suppression. So we very closely interact with light. Why is the blue light so important? So the sun has a peak of blue light emittance, or we're exposed to more blue light during kind of noon times. Yeah, so we want to be actually, like awake. So in the morning, we need the blue light to wake up. In the afternoon, we don't, we shouldn't have it. But again, it's a question, all of these spectral wavelengths that we need as a human being, are we getting this through our coated glass, through our artificial light sources? So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. This is what I just mentioned. It's a kind of light setting on our phones. Now looking at all of these kind of items, we started looking at the so-called melanopic transmittance of glass. I think most of us, we currently know we have the so-called visible light transmittance of glass, which is the transmittance of the glass in the visible spectrum. But now we're setting up a new value, which is so-called melanopic light transmittance, which is focusing on the transmittance of the glazing at this blue light spectrum that's important for the human being, for the circadian rhythm. So we set up this calculation spreadsheet. There's the draft, German Dean. And so we're now putting different topics into the evaluation of the glass. This shows some testing about the visible transmittance. It's a so-called in the photopic, and now in the circadian. And the circadian transmittance, it focuses on the blue light spectrum important to the human being. So we started re-evaluating glass coatings on the performance to the human being. And again, this then comes into the whole discussion, what lux levels, we all know lux levels. So between the so-called photopic lux levels, we now started looking into the so-called melanopic lux levels in the blue light spectrum. Then also the wall colors become important. So how is the reflectance of the wall color for the blue light that we need? We can see here, this is then the whole evaluation. So for the lux level calculation, we're then looking at what is the melanopic transmittance of the glass, what is the melanopic reflectance of our coatings on the walls, depending on the color and so on. So there are a lot of new questions, a lot of new discussions on the human-centric design. Also, keep in mind that actually children behave differently. So the transmittance of the human eye is getting worse over time. So children have a higher transmittance of the lens of the human eye, also in the blue light spectrum. So this is why your kids, if you're working on cell phones late in the afternoon, they have even more under risk not falling asleep because their eyes are fully transmitting the blue light. Also understand the wavelength reflects to color. So this blue light is about what we see over here. And the next slide I'm going to show you also what we're nowadays focusing on. We can see over here that the green spectrum, usually we as a human being want to look out of the window. And there are a couple of studies right now that what kind of color wavelengths also us makes happy as a human being. It's usually the light blue and the green. Nowadays we do green facades, so you look out of the window, and maybe we can replace solar control coating with nature. And you can see then the spectral transmittance of this one. What is it? We're getting the full spectrum, but still shading. So we start thinking outside the box and really looking at things. There's one last thing that I would like to mention. It is the UV spectrum. Because right now, if you would like to have a higher transmittance in the long-wave infrared, we are increasing the solar heat gain coming through the glass. So this then contradicts to the sustainability design. The UV range is quite important. For example, for plants, we clearly know what kind of spectral wavelengths plants need to grow. For human beings, it's a bit more complex. For example, there is nowadays UV transmitting PVB interlayers by Huawei, for example. And especially for the Nordic countries where we are over here, why do we specify normal PVB laminated glass that filters out 99.9% of the UV light? UV light was found to be quite important for human beings. In the past, UV light was thought to be negative, causing color fading, skin cancer, sunburn, and so on. But nowadays, the moderate exposure to UV light was found to be quite important. So this is the thing that I would actually recommend and also kick off with the architects, with all of the consultants. Why are we still using, especially Nordic countries where we have a low exposure to sunlight, why do we still use PVB that's blocking complete UV light? This is kind of comparison between the normal PVB and the PVB that actually transmits the UV light. Keep in mind, UV light also kills bacteria. The COVID virus is killed by UV light. This brings you also to the almost last slide. To the PowerPoint. I couldn't see the time. The screen is black. Yes, sorry. Okay, again, solar or the spectral transmittance in the UV spectrum. So again, what I would already recommend right now, rethink the use of PVB laminated glass. Specify UV transmitting interlayers, because this is a spectrum that was found to be important for human beings. This just compares the solar exposure, especially for the Nordic countries. We would say that for application here, do not specify normal PVB interlayers. It's a kind of low-hanging fruit to increase the human well-being of the people actually inside the buildings. And this brings you to the end. Thank you.
It was a very interesting talk. So many slides.